Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Totally Plans. I'm here with my co-host Mafalda Duarte and with our guest Roufina. And I hope today we have something really interesting. I know we will because Roufina is always super interesting to talk with every time I meet her at events.
Thank you. Sure. Yes. First, thank you very much for having me. It was such a surprise, to be honest. At the first time when I read your message on LinkedIn, I was like, "Yeah, wow!" I felt special. I think one of the aspect of event organizers that we're always in the shadow, in the back, organizing things. But that I want to be in the light. So what I'm trying to say is like it's always very nice. We always like in your situation, creating the situation where people are on stage. Thank you very much for thinking of me. So hi everybody, my name is Roufina. I am working at DEFCOM as a head of sales. DEFCOM, if you haven't heard about us, we are the official game developer conference of Gamescom. We're happening just before Gamescom. So this year is going to be Monday, Tuesday, August 21st and 22nd. Let me double check the dates now, because now I am on a record and I have to make sure that the dates are right. But yes, 21st and 22nd of August. Cologne, Germany, which is the Gamescom is also hosting location. Yeah, actually, I practiced my pitch quite nicely last week at GDC, so it was fun. A couple of things, yeah. Going to GDC, for me, it's always one of the best time of the year. I really love GDC, and I go there with pleasure every single year, and I haven't missed once, except when there was pandemic and we were in lockdown. So for me, it's always a pleasure. I really like how the industry is meeting and how it's such a huge meeting spot for all of us. So I'm really grateful for this event. And as for DEFCON, well, for us, for me particularly, it's also a nice time to be, what are the companies out there? What are they doing? What are the games? How the industry is feeling? Are they optimistic? Or are they pessimistic? Or are they a bit like in Europe, we have all over the world, and there's difficult times ahead of us. And it's like getting the pulse a little bit of the industry and see how things will roll for the next months and such. Then also, of course, meeting with all the US clients and Asian clients that we don't have the chance to meet so often, only online. To be honest, also this year, we went there with 5 people, which is great and a luxury, I have to admit. It's so expensive to fly and to stay. So it was also a very important team building aspect to GDC, and I really wanted to spend as much time as possible with the team, enjoying ourselves, because we all work remotely, and I think it's the case of a lot of people that listen to us. So those moments where we can meet and do something nice at the same time is just extra.
Yeah, we've been discussing a little bit on how events build opportunities in more of the personal level, in things like networking. But I think you coming from that perspective of like a bigger picture, which is, there are these people that you keep meeting in every event that you go to, especially if you are more in like a biz dev area. But it is true that if you go to in the biggest ones, people that are not going everywhere you are because they're from different areas of the world. That's like the best place to meet them, right? Because of course they're going to pick the biggest ones to go to meet those clients. They are from all over the world. So what do you think that is different in approach of going to something like GDC versus maybe like a smaller local event?
I like both events to be. I think it's very important to keep things like major events like GDC and Gamescom and hopefully one day DEFCON, but also the national like smaller events that are very present in Poland, in France, in Czech Republic, or in South America. I don't know all of them. It's so key to meet the local community, and it's quite unique because, as you mentioned, when you go to San Francisco, there's a cost behind. There's the flight, the hotel, the price on site. So not all of us have the ability and the luxury and the privilege is maybe not the right word, but like the chance to travel. And to be honest, we also saw the prices of airlines. Wow, that's quite something. Wasn't the case. So the difference is like GDC is very broad and really attracts both development, production, post-production, pre-production, but also biz dev, like always this business and also the C-level, also the investors, also like it's a big event where we can have everything at the same time, which is scary at this, because if you don't have a special focus, if you're not careful, you can get lost in that. Go to smaller events or more national events, I like to call them. I think it's great to get to know the industry, the local industry, to get really in touch with the region, the country, and experience it in a different way, and then have a very niche and focus. Which GDC is like what 20,000 plus attendees. Just top of my head, you can't meet everybody, so you need to make a decision or make a choices.
Yeah, definitely you cannot go totally unplanned because of all the costs and what is involved. Just so I think just people's time also costs more a
Exactly.
little bit in that, right? You don't want to waste anyone's time because everyone organized, they know that that the experience comes from that a little bit of, again, privilege point of view.
There's another point you mentioned, Rufina, which is the fact that you go there to gauge the current status of the industry is the fact that in practice on an event such as GDC, you are joining people from all around the world. An average of experience will that it, not only you, any like journalists will have that vibe, investors will get that vibe.
Do you feel it's like going out of a bubble in a way, or that it has its own bubble there?
Have to be careful because sometimes there's also natural enthusiasm or excitement. Sorry, Frenchness coming here. Enthusiasm that comes to the fact that we come back to GDC. We haven't been there for quite some time. So last year it was a bit smaller, so that we have to be also careful when we try to paint that landscape, to not get completely. Flooded by this impression of like a back. But yeah, you're right. I think it's about making the right mix between everything that we are meeting. And when I said getting the pulse, I like to see events as a snapshot of what's happening, the special time with a special region or moment. It doesn't mean it's the reality or the truth, but it's really like give you sometimes an idea of how people are feeling. And this could sometimes lead to a situation like, oh yeah, the industry is very enthusiastic and they're really like striving and they have a lot of like potential and they see like opportunities, and this kind of very positivity leads the industry forward. Sometimes I've been to events where you can see people very more careful and be cautious and just not sure, asking a lot of questions, and it's often been moments where the industry was going through a curve, like going down in the wave. That's something I like about events. That's kind of snapshots. We have the chance to experience.
But it's your snapshot from this year.
If you talk to the investors, they will say, "We have to be careful," which is, reality, right? The acquisition and merge will actually slow down, and I think we're seeing it a little bit. But I had the impression that companies were willing to get out, to travel, and to get out of there and to make connections. So overall, it's quite positive, and especially for my line of business. Obviously, when I see for the following, I'm like, oh, that's positive for us at DevCom and also Gamescom. So we also readjust a little bit our aims or forecast or expectations somehow.
Is there something that changes in terms of the experience that you want to give in another event? Because I remember when we organized things, you organize like a few things around Portugal, not only game dev meets and things like game dev and game dev camp and other things. But when pandemic hit, that's when we organized our first B2B event online, which was invested in the games. And back then was just like, okay, now everyone is like, they don't know where to start, but they're also in a way being more open, go to different markets and to go to different opportunities and all of that. And so that's how we build that up. And so is there something for you? Because like it's different, right? DevCon has like established a story now, so there's like something that people expect, but also I imagine you keeping in touch with what the industry is looking for can like influence sometimes. Okay, maybe we should have more speakers on this direction or more activities on that. So is there something that you feel like affects you more than other things, maybe like talks, or maybe just like things happening in the industry, or it's even just coming from the speakers themselves, like people are applying.
In a sense of influence, obviously. For the speakers in the program, it's hard to really answer this question. I think if you have a very good question, but it's really hard for me to answer it, just because I'm not tied so closely to the program. I speak with Nico, and I try to keep track of all the ideas that he has. It's not always a success, but for sure, it gives some ideas. But also, we tried, for us at DEFCON, we try to carve our own history or story rather. So we don't want to rehash like some of the talk that had been at GDC. Obviously, it will happen. So we don't want to just duplicate or clone, but we get ideas and such. For the GDC decided, I believe, not to have the event hybrid. It was on site. And they had an article explaining why that decision was made. And I totally understand that decision. We decided otherwise. We decided to be 100% hybrid, for example, because we wanted to give the opportunity to attend DEFCON and to listen to the talks, no matter what they are from the world and no matter the cost, for example. Then that's one thing. And how are getting expired? I think this is a very interesting example because the scale of it. They're dealing with a different. DEFCON is not the same size yet. Maybe one day, hopefully, let's see. History will tell us. So we're learning a couple of things about how they're dealing, for example, the IGF Award or the GDC Choice Award was very interesting. But I think, once again, even though we are event organizer, doesn't mean that we are seeing all the struggle of GDC. I don't want to paint it like such. I think they have their own struggle. I think they have their own decisions that are extremely valid as well. So we also come as an external attendee here.
Yeah, but I think when you organize events, you have that side is like, you know how hard it is, and you just say the scale and all of that, and it's like, yeah, they probably made that decision with something else in mind, because you know that no one organizing such a big thing.
Oh yeah, must do it's insane. I mean, a program 6 to 8 months ahead. That's amazing. I love it.
It requires not only planning, but a lot of resources and a lot of people to make an event happen.
Okay, one thing that we get actually inspired and we're trying to see if we can replicate it at DEFCON is how the program, they use advisors. Like they have, I think, 100 plus, or maybe not, that's not sure, but like 20 plus for sure advisors that help them on the program. So there's people that are not working from GDC, but are actually from the industry and working on their own title within their own company that say, hey, I want to help on the program. I want to take some time to do that. That's something we would love to also initiating at DEFCON. Because at the end of the day, the program is made for the developers. So we need developers to actually initiate it.
And again, that's a way to get that industry pulse in a more internal and close collaboration way, especially if you can have developers from different regions. And coming from this perspective, Diogo can attest to this, just talking about investment, for example, in Europe and all of that, is just like literally coming from all those different countries can have a huge range of expectation of what are the needs from those different markets. Because, yeah, Estonia and Germany are quite close by and probably not the same opportunities, not the same struggles, not the same thing they're looking for, and the same for among a bunch of different countries around here. So having that scope and scale of advisors would be very interesting.
For DEFCON, we do advisory board, and they're helping us, like opening some doors, giving us some topics, giving us some speakers. We also, it's funny because we also get the help of some not random, but some other other speakers, exhibitors, attendees who just say, hey, I want to some ideas, and they reach out to us and we take it into consideration.
And that's appreciated.
For sure.
Like that's something useful. That would motivate me a lot. Seeing has some sort of meaning, and people feel like it could be better because it should be better.
I think that's a little bit of when you put yourself in the events as well. Not only and it connects you more with the industry as a whole, and I think it connects with something that we've been talking about. That games industry is not just about developers. It's about everyone that makes the ecosystem where they can thrive and where we can make our games. And that's what you're saying about, like, for example, oh, maybe I'm in the shadows because I'm just like an event organizer or something like that. But maybe because of the events, that's where some developers can meet investors and can put their game out there. And things like, for example, in Gamescom, having the indie arena booth space, that's like huge, right? For just to connect with players, and what does that visibility that brand gives also. And so I think that's that element of that building ecosystems. It's not keywords, it's really what makes us exist as an industry in the whole.
I can give a clear, practical example where you, Rufina, had an impact, and I'm sure this multiplies towards a lot of studios and a lot of developers, which is just for the simple fact that on in 2019 you invited me for a dinner, which unlocked. Basically, I don't recall the details about dinner. I just recall that there was this issue with the guest list, but it's a story for later. And from that point, I was at a table where other developers were there, and we discussed a couple of things that unlocked to meeting a CEO of another. Then invite me to a dinner on a different country, and from then we even discussed other things. So I know that you've been very impactful for a lot of developers and studios. And then trying to gauge is okay. I have that perspective of you, but I would also be very interested to know what your conscious perspective of what DevCom can have to offer positive for you.
Sure. Thank you. It's always funny when it comes like this. I'm glad I actually remember it was the networking dinner. I remember, yeah. Conceptualizing DevCom is like it's a developer conference, so we have the program, which is nice. Like it's perfect to meet the speakers and get to know, to share knowledge and best practices and such, and meet other fellow developers. Then we also have, let's make it very simple. Have an expo that is like where it's perfect to like showcase your service or technology or to recruit. We also have an indie expo with like different sections, so perfect for the developers to showcase the games and meet publishers. And then we have a lot of networking opportunities. And then I think that's one of the strengths of DevCom is we are creating moments within the 2 days and a half, because we're starting on a Sunday, where people can meet in a more relaxed atmosphere, or more either sometimes very niche. So, for example, we're planning to have an executive dinner for 50 people, and here we're going to select the attendees, make sure that they have, not that they know each other already, but that there has a reason for them to connect to each other. And then on a bigger scale, for example, the networking dinner, which is like around 400 guests. And here is like a mix between speakers, VIPs, and partners, but also we're trying to kind of show that there's a nice, that we don't miss anybody. And if we do, please, I apologize in advance. Please let us know, and we will try to arrange things as much as we can, obviously, on the last day. So there's the networking aspect of DevCom is kind of, I think, one of our strengths, I would say, because we're doing 2 networking opportunity on a Sunday, 2 on the Monday, 2 on the Wednesday, on the Tuesday. And in the meantime, during the day, there's also some other smaller networking opportunities organized by our sponsors and partners. So there's many reasons, many ways for our audience to actually get in touch and having share popcorn, share ice cream, a beer, go to the executive dinner, go to one of our party, and then that's where you use those connection and those stories. Actually, at the end, it's a story. That's what it's funny about. Those stories starts, and then you just have to follow the thread.
Yeah, I was just going to say just about that specific element of that. The 2 times I went, I always went to DEF CON first and then Gamescom, and everyone was always like, if you haven't been to DEF CON before, it's so hard to connect to new people when it's the big environment and everything is happening. And so I think like one of the very good strengths at DEF CON is just open air moment to interact with each other. It's not like, if I don't know, if there's DJ and the music is still, I'll just go to like 2 meters away and you're already like fine to just hang and talk. And it's like an open space, which is great for, again, like this COVID times and all of that, just like to feel safe, to feel that you have space to walk around, that you're not closed in the dark area. And I think that's one of like biggest things that was like very big impact. And also that you don't need to move anywhere to start connecting. It's just like step outside. Here you are. This is the networking area. And I think like a lot of those things gives a lot of like cozy vibe to those 2 days, 2 days and a half. But and so I think that's that part of just starting to like see someone in that crowd that you keep bumping into because there's no other place to go.
This reminded me, because sometimes we stay remote, we work, we're so deep into the grinding our own work, we actually forget why we are in that industry. And at the end of the day, it's just because we like to make friends and make, of course, games, and we love games. But at the end of the day, through that journey of making games or selling games or whatever, we're actually making friends. And that's what I like about, and GDC reminded me, is that all of those people eventually meet them again, and then you share a story, share something, and then they're actually part of your network, or part of your friendship. And I had moments like this at GDC. Was like, oh my god, I haven't seen you in 10 years. I was like so touched by seeing that person, and I was like, damn. And then the person tell me the story, what they are, what happened in the meantime, and I was like, oh, I remember we went to eat those mussels, and I found out that the person didn't like mussel at all. Anyway, story, and then it's just so warming, and that's what I like about that.
Oh, for sure. You just unblock like all the Gamescom, DevCon stories now, because like actually that's for me, for example, like in a personal level, that's now how we and Diogo met. We met 5 years ago, Diogo. We
No.
we met so many years before that, but
Mafalda didn't exist in my
remember
life,
me.
and actually
Oh.
until they've come. The note I have
Wow.
here, as what you were saying,
That's-
is the
That's
following.
such a lie.
This podcast and the work we did at Nerd Monkeys was
Wow.
thanks to DevCom, because it was actually at DevCom that met, let's put some quotes, I met Mafalda because I saw her on an environment very close to my type of work, in biz dev and in interaction, and I saw, here's someone that actually is very similar to my approach and my style. And then I think still in Germany, I tweeted you. I said, look, maybe we should talk about this a little bit further.
Oh,
And then
that's
we
great.
met afterwards, and
Maybe.
we figured out a way of working together. So in that sense, see how impactful that event can be. Mafalda is going to try and convince you is that we actually met in 2014 and 2015, but she was not there. It's like there's no proof, no recordings, nothing.
To note on that is that year I was still doing 2D art freelancing. I was in my master's doing something around narrative design. I thought I was going that direction back then, and it was very nice. One thing is like I connect to people that were in more of an academic side of games, so I figured that those people also attended game events, and it was a great way to connect to like internationally, and also like, oh, my thesis is all about this, and they're like very excited, which never happens. Whenever you say you're doing a thesis about game design, no one cares. I never deliver it, but it was about like the process of adaptation and how can you adapt something as linear as Fables into video games that are not linear at all and has those like the input of a player. But it was also very interesting to go around and debate that with people. And again, and just like talking about art and all of that. And that made me into a producer apparently. But then because Diogo looked and he was like, you should come to Nerd Monkeys and produce with me and do biz dev. And so I think it's also a way sometimes to unlock some like things about yourself that maybe even you wouldn't notice, because any student that might be listening to our podcast, I also always try to have like a bit for them. It's just like sometimes you don't even know the types of jobs and types of opportunities that exist into the game industry, because it's like it's not about being an artist, right? You can do textures or 3D or like 2D, and then into 2D you can be concept, or you can do just promotional art. And as soon as you're there, I remember like that year in 2019, I heard the talk about, and I'm so sorry I can't remember the name right now, but and she did a talk about the narrative design work she was doing at for Candy Crush. And that back then was like mind blowing, because like, maybe you think about narrative design only for like games that had narrative in it, right? Or when she explained it, I was like, yes, that's exactly the thing. Like, how can you incorporate themes and all of that within gameplay and that design? It didn't need to have words specifically, even though of course they were part of it. And I think just connecting with that and like how different even if you know that the job exists, understanding different ways how it is applied, because games are so different from each other. That's like a huge high opening.
Yeah, and also I think there's another thread I can pull here, which is, as an organizer of an event, you must be painfully aware how hard it is to bring new talents, new developers, new people from different backgrounds and different cultures and different countries. And it is a very active and constant decision, a lot of work to do that. I know you do this because the reason we were there meeting, even though we are both from Portugal, need to meet each other professionally. And the reason was, at the time, me and Ricardo Flores, we were working together to try and bring opportunities to try and have more Portuguese studios being represented at the events and expanding their horizons and bringing more networking opportunities and investment opportunities and learning through the talks, etc., etc. And we actually achieved that. I think I'm not fully sure, but I think at least 10 studios were represented at there, which was a very big increase compared to previous editions. And so, even though I think you agree with what I'm saying, would you even say that's the hardest parts of organizing the DevCon, or is that something I'm missing here?
It's really hard, but also it's like not forgetting anybody. And you actually always forget someone. It's really hard. It's like you have to go into that situation consciously saying, we're trying our best, but I know it's not going to be enough and it will be always like different perspective. We're always trying to create the best moment for everybody, but we also know that some people will not have the best time. And we also know what situations that are not okay, that we are trying to address when we hear about them and actually address them on site as fast as possible. The thing is, any work, we start somewhere, and then as we pull the thread, we actually realize, oh, there's here, and there's there, and then it's this. So there's like always a conscious work of staying focused on what we're trying to do and what's the goal or what's the objective. And then there's always like, as you mentioned earlier, that we have to accept. And then we say, okay, but let's do this as well. Or let's also focus on this specific need as well. Like in 2019, we had Womanize happening at DevCon. It was really nice. A Women in Game breakfast, and it was organized by Womanize, which is a German city based in Berlin. And last year we decided to expand that. We wanted to actually have a more inclusive aspect to that inclusive and opportunity at DevCon. So we did a Flinta meetup. We had a couple of registration. That was really nice. We see the nice momentum on site. Sadly, we were, I think, 15, 20. It was smaller, quite intimate group. Let's put it there.
Yeah, it's like 2 tables. Yeah.
But it was the first step, for example, towards something else much bigger. And I think at the end of the day, DevCon and any event is organized by people. And it's people's desire who we're trying to push. And when someone says, hey, for me, this is very important, and we're like, okay, let's go. Let's do it. Flinta was something important for us because we had non-binary people in the team, and we felt we wanted to create a safer space for them. And for the program, as I mentioned, it's also, as you said, it's a proactive. I think you very nicely nailed it down. It's a proactive action. It's about deciding that sometimes we're not going to go the easy way. We're going to take the hard way because that's what for us is meaningful. And maybe it's not going to be successful right away, and that's okay. We have the chance to afford that, not to be successful, like having thousands of women and non-binary or trans speakers. But I think it's the first step. And also I also have to be aware that it takes time. You can't ask someone who is not used to speak, who maybe doesn't want to be visible or be on stage, who maybe have a personal story that they are just healing from, let's put it. And we can't ask them to put them on stage. It doesn't work like that. It's a very personal decision, and you have to be vulnerable when you go on stage. It's a long process, but for me, it was when I started DevCon, when I talked to Stefan, I remember in December 2018. Well, when I talked to him just before starting, he said something that for me changed. It was like, he said, I want to change things. I want to use DevCon to change things, the status quo in the industry. And for me, it really resonated because I was like, I wanted to move like in the industry in a sense that was for me more inclusive. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do whatever I can in that direction. So, and sometimes it also comes down to speaking to your colleagues, or standing up or say, hey, this is not okay. Why do you think this way? Why can we do this way? For example, I remember talking to the content team and saying, because they were like, oh, we don't have enough women, but like, we should ask why women don't decline. First question, like, why? I understand, but why are you not coming? What can we make to make you more comfortable into our conference? What should we change? And sometimes the answer will be maybe nothing. Maybe they will say, well, listen, I don't feel comfortable speaking in a crowd where 80% are men. Very valid point. I don't think I will be comfortable. So then maybe then we as an organizer, we should, okay, maybe what about creating something, a workshop, smaller or something, like work with them in a situation where to create something that they feel safer. It's an ongoing process. It's also a process for us organizers to say how we should rethink maybe the space. We could change little things here and there that makes people more comfortable. Like we had a prayer room or a silent room or a mother room.
From the things that you're describing, I remember, again, my first experience was I'd never been to an event where there were like lady things in the bathroom. And I was like, yes, oh, they thought of me. I was like, oh, I wish I had my period today because I could like you feel warm and welcome on things, little things like that. And another element of what you're describing is, I think, having options of, like, I saw, for example, in the application of DevCom, like the care of like, hey, you want to talk about this, but you have colleagues that you want to apply with. For example, I think that's like a way to open that up, because there might be people that are like, okay, I'm comfortable if I'm like in a panel element or talking with my colleagues or whatever, but I wouldn't do this alone. And so even in the application, that being there, I think it opens up a lot of people that wouldn't apply other way. And I had that experience doing a little panel at this year game dev camp of women in games ambassadors, and the other two, they never like spoke in public like that in an event. And I remember the worries was like, oh, there's going to be people there asking boys, they saying things like, why is this a woman issue, why is not from everyone, or whatever, those questions are very just to throw you off a little bit. And for little things like that, it was just, okay, you need to have maybe just a moderator that can take that first, and it's never directly to the speakers. You don't worry, you'll have a moderator there, that person is going to take it first and you're just going to handle it, or have someone else in the organization there in the space so they don't feel like they have to combat with the audience and things like that. So just like thinking about those little elements, I think it goes to what you're saying about why are people not feeling comfortable in this space, because it can be like, and I see a lot of that changes, again, more panels, more workshops, more of those even like intimate rooms instead of just being like in open spaces, because I think that's a little bit of the element of scaredness. It's like, okay, if this can be unlimited, or if people can be kind of listening and kind of not, maybe I'd feel I just don't want my words be recorded, or like things like that.
That experience you just described, Mafalda, comes from the little things that Roufina was saying about, which is the let's try one little thing here, let's try one little thing, and each time you do it, you learn something, and sometimes it goes horribly wrong, and sometimes it goes away. They want more of this. It had a major impact with such a small effort. Those moments comes from that experience, from learning iterative event organizing, right?
Iteration is extremely important for sure, but as you mentioned, listening and asking a question, I think it's very often we sometimes believe we're experts. I think we all kind of experts somewhere, but at the end of the day, we're also here to learn, and sometimes someone has another point, and it's very important to listen, to be like humble enough to be like, okay, you know what? I will step back, take that argument or point. I will think about it, and instead of like reacting right away. One of the things I was always saying, diversity or inclusion, or that going from that journey, it's not like you start and you finish. No, just keep working, just working, and then maybe you're getting better, but it's not like you will. It's no end goal. Sometimes I have people that say, oh, I want to. Companies that we want to be diverse. And also we have to hire diverse people, and often it's overlooked if maybe the environment that the company itself is toxic, and maybe they haven't made the changes inside, so they can't retain the diverse crew. It's also about like the introspective as well path in a sense. So also say, hey, let's think about it. Maybe before being trying to be diverse and hiring, let's just look at ourselves first and solve that.
And understanding the diversity, like literally in the word, comes in very different shapes and sizes and whatever that means. So it can be, maybe you're just very culturally diverse in a fully male environment. You can be you have blind spots in different areas. Or again, you're very gender diverse, but everyone is from this one country and own culture, and they don't have appreciation for other types of thinking. And it is an utopia too, unless we keep tracking of like the percentages of each person of everywhere. So I think it is definitely more of a culture that we're trying to promote first, and less about numbers or specific people. And I think that's a very good takeaway, again, not only for events but just for work environment everywhere. Because if you want this in our projects, in our studios, and in our events, then you need to think a little bit about what it means.
I was studying at DEFCON in 2019, and I was thinking about this. What does it mean to have a safe event? How do we describe that? How do we make it even happen? Because with such an amount of people, you can't regulate. You can't be behind people at every single point, and you can't ask people to speak, because it's not always easy in that situation. So I think we're still learning. It's not perfect. Please let us know what we can do better. Always.
I have the experience of going through misconceptions of what a local event is, the value of it, the costs involved, the ticketing price, etc. And I assume those even scale way up into the bigger the event. On my end, often I see the difficulty of understanding the value or the ticket costs in relationship to the building the event, because as much as you try to be transparent, it's very, very opaque elements of understanding what involves, for example, bringing 30 speakers from around the world, or it's a speaker that has travel and hotel
And sometimes family
member or get sick while at the event, and we need to figure out those things as well. People don't, and it's more than fair that they don't see it because it's part of the background, backstage of things. What is, in your opinion, some of the biggest misconceptions that you see from your experience?
Especially because you try to sell the things out, right? So it's like you need to show the value.
So, wow, I think food, catering, food and beverages. It's such a tricky cost. It's such a cost that, especially with the venue that we are, is hard to compress. So this is really hard for us. We're trying our best, trying to leverage things as much as we can, but there's a limit that we sometimes reach. So yeah, this is a hard cost. Making the event hybrid, yeah, because we want to have all the stages and capture the stream and as well as the audio and have it everything on the event app. So we saw a huge increase of that cost last year. What else? There's also like always a bit of hidden cost here and there that's behind, like when we do a networking moment of opportunity, there's always like it's always once again it's going to be the food mostly, and the drinks.
Yeah, but I think that's like the most missed,
Yeah.
if it doesn't exist, and also the one that people are not thinking about, right? It's like maybe they're like, oh yeah, whatever, just food, and that's like such a big part and so important. So yeah, I think it's a great it's a great thing to put here, to kind of a little bit of
Coffee, yes. But the funny thing with events, once again, is like the most basic needs that we have gonna be, of course, like food and water. That's also like the most expensive. It's crazy, but we can't go without it, right?
Yeah, adding to that, from different, because I've not only game dev events but also game events or cultural events which I've been involved. I would add trash cans, which usually have. It's way more complicated than anyone can imagine about the logistics of having enough and frequently taken care of. Like, it's really hard, and guaranteeing bathrooms to be like in perfect conditions or at least frequently taken care of. It's way harder than I would imagine to take care of.
Yeah, it's always the small things. The funny thing about food and beverage is like this is actually part of the what creates the best experience of so many people who say, "Oh, I remember that dinner there and that," and I'm like, "Wow." First, the fact that the person remembered the dinner, but not the person, not the people that they met. That's kind of always like, wow. But it happens so often. It's like food that you had, the drinks, and then because it's I don't know why. And sometimes we event organizers believe that we need to have the best booze and everything, and actually at the end it's actually the food and the coffee. Often it's coffee.
I would say it's like it also goes circles back to what you said is the heart of DevCon, which is if at the heart of it you have networking, then that's where people gather around food and drinks. And so I think it also a little bit of like what is at the core of the thing you are putting together, what you're trying to do. And again, just as like last note for like people watching, they're like, oh, but how can I organize events in my little, just be by myself? I don't have a team. I don't have things. Guys, it's just food and drinks. Get a coffee.
Exactly, and that's I was talking to I met Maggie. It's I don't know. I'm very bad with last names, and I apologize, but I always remember the first names and never the last names. I met this person in Maggie, based in Prague or Czech Republic, and she was telling me about how she started the meetups in the region, and she just started like the meetup, like let's go to a bar and have drinks, and now she's like going more and more, doing it just more and more, and eventually she's gonna manage to animate the industry and the community, and that's how you start. You have to start somewhere with friends around something that you enjoy. Maybe it could be a game night, or some people, with some snacks.
It's not that different from in Porto when I was invited for these startups talks because I was starting Nerd Monkeys at the time. It was really at the beginning. It was a studio, and other developers that I didn't know about went to watch my talk, and afterwards we spent the whole time talking, and we went out for drinks and discussing, and we spent so many hours together having fun and talking and even drawing. There was an artist drawing at the moment. It ended up being what we called it the first meetup there, and we were always every month doing something, and that's how it was born out, just being there, right? So that's really not much to it. It's not hard.
It become harder
actually
after that.
not that hard, yeah.
I feel as it grows, yes.
As it grows, because then as it grows there's more, but this is the serious one, like serious by mistake, sorry, I'm sorry.
You're very right about managing expectation. That's also a very important aspect of events. Don't oversell it. Don't oversell it, yeah.
But it's hard not to, right? Because you also at the same time you want to do more, and in the end it can get very easily out of control and become more of a kind of a reference, because also, and come on, you might not want to admit this, but one who's listening, but you are a little bit lazy when it comes to making events. Like, you always expect the majority of the time for someone else to be proactive instead of doing your own thing. And a common question we get here in Portugal is, oh, when X type of event is going to happen again, or when my city is going to have another meetup here, and the answer is, but you are already there and you already know everyone there, just set it up. But oftentimes they don't. They really expect someone else, and they create this idea of you're the one supposed to do this, like it's from everyone, from everyone, for everyone.
Funny, completely different example, and maybe we should not be the best 6 minutes before the end. I was talking to my partner about about decision, which is consent, like taking together, and how as part of that everybody takes responsibility and actions to actually share and have a part of that decision process, and not just rely that someone else will take a decision that would be the best for you, or maybe not. And that sharing that, and I think it's very hard to move away from being like, oh, but someone else will actually do that for me. To be, I'm also responsible. I have a little bit of responsibility in that sphere, and taking it and moving it forward. And I will almost say it's a societal change, to be honest. Like, it's, I think, moving away from just like, oh yeah, the hierarchy, boss will do that or someone else will do it, but actually, hey, maybe I can do it as well. If that's okay, go ahead.
And you can, like I'm telling you, you can do it. It's not that hard. Just do it.
I would just say that connects right away to something that we keep talking about, that like definitely my mentor in the world is the like be the change you want to be, but like in a way that there are ways for you to be that change, that it doesn't mean you now need to become like a big event organizer, right? Like you can be the person that replies to the forums after the event saying what did you like or didn't you like, and help, right? Because if you don't speak up and if you don't try to give like your opinion, maybe they can then not act on it and change it and all of that. And so there's like so many ways where you can be that change and you can be a helpful force and you can go forward. You just need to understand that the impact little actions have in the world.
It's the first step to become an ally. It's like I can also do something about it.
This has been extremely interesting, but I think we've already reached our time. Thank you very much for accepting this, even though it was totally planned. We made this a long time ago, right? It was really, really easy. And you've been amazing, and I do hope that I'm able to talk with you later on.
I would love that. Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure. Completely unexpected once again, and you had a very tough questions, man. I was not expecting. You were saying, "Oh, it's gonna be easy," but some of the questions were really tough. But I hope I answered that as much as the best as my abilities. Yeah, I wish you all the best. It was a pleasure seeing you both. Go ahead, change things, move things, and I'm looking forward to see you at DevCon. Let's connect after that. If anybody wants to join us, we're in Cologne, in Germany.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone listening, until the next episodes.
See you.
See ya. Bye.